Hey, deserving listeners, the tell-all, no limits. Let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. If you want to support what we're doing here, become a patron only if you care to and only if you can afford it. Let's watch.
Me no speak English.
What the? You know what? It's not something to joke about, Ed.
It is, because this is her. This is who Liz is.
She's reading, the proof is in the pudding. She's reading a stupid text.
Tell me about that text.
Just
Tell me what about that text.
I've not spoken to her.
See?
Right. So that's what I thought he was going to do. So he's saying, she's just jealous all the time. And you could imagine if it was just Liz and Ed, if you did that over time, if you're Liz, you could get thrown off by that because Ed seems so convinced of his narrative here of like, oh, you're just jealous. So I think he's using this tactic for two reasons. One is because he wants to keep up the narcissistic veil. And he also wants to retain his relationship with Liz in this very weird way by trying to just... So we all do this to a lesser extent, where someone will come to us, say we're really busy with work and we're kind of distant from our partner. You know, we're really stressed out. We're in a bad mood for a couple of days. And our partner comes to us and is just like, hey, you're being distant. Okay, your partner comes to us as you're being distant because we're not very aware of how we're coming across other people, or we're worried we're going to lose our partner if that's true because we're ashamed of ourselves for being distant or even slightly hostile to our partners. And so we'll say, no, I've been fine. I've just been really kind of busy with work. And then, partner says, but you've been distant. And then we will get defensive and say, well, that's in our minds, we'll say, well, that's because you're so needy, or, well, that's your fault. You're just interpreting it that way. And we might even say those sorts of things to our partner. We might say, well, look, I've been working really hard. You're choosing to interpret it as me rejecting you. That's on you. That's your fault. We do that all the time. You add all that up, that could be a gaslighting kind of situation. But at the very least, we're trying to get our partner, whatever feeling that they're having that is causing them to be upset at us and hurt by us. One of the very first tactics that people will utilize is just say, stop doing that. You're misinterpreting everything. Now, sometimes that can work if you're effective in helping and validating and then also convincing the person that it was interpreted, quote unquote, wrong. But that's often all we do is just like, well, you're interpreting it wrong. That's on you. Instead of just saying, I'm sorry, you can still say, I didn't mean to reject you and I wasn't actively rejecting you, but I could see how it would come across that way. And, both can be true. I didn't intend on rejecting you. I wasn't actively rejecting you. I was just really stressed out about work. And I could see how it would feel rejecting and it would feel distancing. It's fine. That's differentiation. That's maturity. The ability to admit that we make mistakes, or even our behavior can be misinterpreted, reasonably misinterpreted, if you will. Or although I was really busy with work and that's not my fault and I wasn't actively rejecting you, I could have put a little bit more effort into our relationship. It wouldn't have taken much for me to go to you and say, hey, I'm really busy with work, or I'm really stressed out. Sorry for being a little distant. It just takes literally 10 seconds to say something like that, and I didn't do that. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm not ashamed of it, but lesson learned. I'll try to remember that next time. So we all do that, and I think that's what Ed is doing right now, is that Liz is saying, she hasn't even really introduced how she's going to react. She's just trying to check in like, so you lied? Is that what I'm hearing? He's trying to deflect. He's trying to throw off, get her off the rails, right? Get the train off the tracks. And so he's like, you're always the jealous one. This is you. And I'm going to prove to everyone, Liz is always like that. She's constantly jealous all the time. And here she goes again. She has not said anything about jealousy. All she has asked was, I think you lied to me. Ed has done this before, and he'll probably do it again, and he'll probably continue doing it here. Let's watch.
This is who Liz is.
She's reading, the proof is in the pudding. She's reading a stupid text.
Tell me about that text.
Just
Tell me what about that text.
I've not spoken to her.
See?
You just lied to
Liz.
everybody right here.
And good on Liz for being able to say it in a differentiated way. I mean, if I were in Liz's shoes, I think I would have lost it and lost differentiation and just, I don't know, started screaming or walking off or something. But Liz is calmly just saying, you lied to me and everyone here, and everyone can see it. And so let's see what Ed does now.
Liz, what are you thinking right now?
So I think they edited it, but it looks like Ed is just resorting. I'm quite sure that Ed and Liz would be able to account to this, would be able to attest to this, that Ed has a set of, and I've talked about this before, we might have even seen all of them on the show, a set of 20 different things that he does repeatedly, and he just sort of cycles through. And I think right now he's cycling to, I'm going to not say anything in the hope that you stop having that feeling and stop attacking me, and two, you start to think of yourself as the crazy one so that you won't leave me, is the weird distorted idea here. Because I don't have any defense and there's all these people around, and so I know I'm not going to win. I can't engage in my normal defense. And I can't admit that there's something wrong with me because that is too much of a threat to the veil that will cause me to fall into a pit of despair. And I believe, and I don't know, this is complete speculation, I believe that if I admit that there actually is something wrong with me, no one will want to be with me because I kind of believe that no one wants to be with me anyway. And so I'll just shut down and I'll be quiet and I'll think all these thoughts that I'm superior and I know I didn't do anything wrong, and yes, it's all her fault, but there's no use in trying to communicate that because everyone is stupid and I'm better than everyone. And I imagine that's the loop that he's in right now.
Tired of all the lies and deflection and projection.
Yeah, good. So she's saying deflection. I don't know what she means by projection. Probably what she means, well, I can imagine what she means by projection is that he is the one who is the jealous person, and he's the one who is cheating, or at least doing things, lying about things. And he's projecting it onto Liz, saying, you're the jealous one, you're the cheater. And she knows that she's not particularly jealous, and she knows she's not cheating. And then the deflection of always coming up with some angle to defend himself, something to throw up a smokescreen.
Kung nagsasabi ka ng totoo, gaya ng ginawa mo sa akin, nagsinungaling ka, bakit nagsisinungaling ka din sa kanya kung totoong mahal mo talaga siya?
Well, first of all, I'm not lying to Liz. I'm not denying the fact that I was on a dating website a year and a half ago. I admitted that. I didn't remember if I had texted Rose or not, and Liz and I were broken up.
Why didn't you just say that at the beginning? That's all you had to say. All he has to say is, we were broken up at the time, and I forgot. I see it now that I did it, and I could see how that would look like I'm lying, and maybe that's something wrong with me. Or, there's so many ways to talk about what just happened without lying about it, but he chose to lie, I think, because he potentially distorts things and is also potentially looking for reasons to railroad Liz into jealousy so that he can label her as jealous, so that he can let himself off the hook, so that he can believe that Liz will never leave him because they can both agree that they're both jealous. Do you know what I'm saying? Am I making sense with this? I feel like I'm not making sense.
It's a lie, not even no. It's a lie.
You guys, you're with somebody for 2 years. You broke up 10 times. I don't even know, honestly, if we were together or not. I can't even tell you that.
You can
Terrible
rattle off
relationship.
every single thing that Liz has done. But when I ask you a simple question like, did you reach out to Rose? You told me no 3 times.
Yeah, good. Sean is being interesting right now. I've heard that they film for a number of days, these tell-alls, at least 1 or 2 days, and they edit it down. So there's a lot that's edited out in terms of what Sean will contribute. So it's hard to know what's going on, but sometimes we're like, oh, I wish that Sean would have asked this, but this is good. So Sean's really, putting a fine point on it. It's like, you lied to us 3 times. Now, Ed could say, you're right. It wasn't a lie, though. I literally just didn't remember, or I was trying to block it. There's a lot of ways to respond to this without coming across as shady. Now, I suspect that, as I was saying earlier, he absolutely remembers contacting Rose, because that would be a very strange thing to forget, right? Because he basically was saying, post-breakup, he's literally never talked to her online. That would be something you would remember. Now, maybe he has an issue with memory, but I don't think so. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's talk about empowerment. When we feel empowered, we recognize our strengths. When we feel empowered and we experience adversity, we're more likely to see it as a welcome challenge rather than an overwhelming obstacle. And since we're social creatures, we often need help from others to feel empowered at times. We might need others to give us perspective. We might need others to recognize how we might be able to overcome the obstacle. And sometimes the people around us, they're really not that much help. I've been there before. When I went to therapy for the first time when I was 19 years old, it was primarily because none of my friends were very helpful in this area. Sometimes it's really great to talk with a therapist when you want to feel more empowered. Well, that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp is convenient and flexible and affordable. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
You didn't remember.
I might have been mistaken.
Right now, he's just upset because even his ex-fiancé just called him out on all the truth.
Rose, do you think that Ed is still interested in having a relationship with you?
Sa tingin ko, gusto niya, ayaw niya kasi nasa isang relasyon siya ngayon.
She's saying he's interested, but he's in a relationship right now.
Okay, so Rose thinks that at times Ed was interested in being back with Rose. Could be. I mean, it's just hard to know anything because Ed is so prone to lying about things and throwing up smoke screens. And there wouldn't be anything wrong with that if Ed were to admit that. Just be like, yeah, I miss Rose. I know it sounds weird, but when Liz and I were broken up, there'd be times when I'd reach out to Rose, and frankly, there were other exes of mine that I reached out to because, I was single and I don't know, have a couple glasses of wine, I start texting people or whatever. Yeah. I admit that. But when Liz and I are together, I don't have any thoughts about being with Rose. There's a lot of different responses here other than because I feel like there's a reasonable story here for Ed. Because do we think that Ed isn't in this constant pining for Rose since they broke up? I doubt that. It could be, but I doubt it. So there's probably a reasonable reason as to why he reached out to her. And in the text you see, he's like, hey, how about I come down there? How about I come to the Philippines and visit you? It'd be hard to interpret that any other way other than trying to rekindle the relationship, At the very least, if he was trying to be friends, he would be clear in that text. Just as friends, by the way, But so it looks like he was trying to rekindle things, which would have been fine. People try to rekindle all the time. I'm sure he'd get a lot of hate online, but it's not abnormal to do that. But for some reason on this show and in life, people they feel like if they admit a little bit, they're admitting what people are accusing them of. So they feel like they have to hold the line, but they end up, because they're lying and it looks so shady, it's hard not to imagine the worst is the likelihood of, like your teenager, your 14-year-old takes the car out in the middle of the night and you see it on your security camera and the kid comes back and you confront the 14-year-old and you're like, you took the car. And the 14-year-old's like, no, I didn't. And you're like, yeah, I know that you took the car. Where did you go? I didn't go anywhere. And then someone calls you and says that they thought they saw your kid driving the car 100 miles per hour on the freeway. And you say, someone said that you were driving 100 miles per hour on the freeway. And the kid was like, that's impossible because I didn't even take the car out. Okay. So in that moment, as a parent, you'd be stupid to, one, believe that the kid didn't take the car out because you know that they did. And two, by extension, you'd be kind of stupid to believe that they didn't drive 100 miles per hour on the freeway. Whereas, let's say in this scenario, the kid didn't drive 100 miles per hour on the freeway. Kid comes home and you're like, hey, you took the car out. And the kid's like, oh, yeah, sorry. I just really like driving the car. I just went to a friend's house and we didn't do anything. It was just kind of innocent, but you're right. I took the car out. And then your friend calls, said, I saw your kid on the freeway driving 100 miles per hour. And then you go to the kid, you're like, hey, and the kid's like, no, I didn't even go on there. What are you talking about? That's nonsense. You're much more likely to believe the kid. So people, I'm always saying, just don't lie. Ed, you look like you are lying, which not only destroys this entire argument that you're trying to make, but also undermines everyone's trust in you, particularly Liz. Liz is the most important person in the scenario. But for me now, when Ed says anything, I don't know if I can believe anything that he's saying, because he's being so shady in this moment about something that I don't even think he has to be shady about. Interestingly, going back to what Liz was saying about how he projects, he must have been lied to a lot or something. He might have lying trauma. Or shady trauma, where someone was very shady with him. I don't know that, of course, but it would explain a few things. And so he is often saying to her, at the engagement party, the first one in San Diego, he sees her having a fight with a former coworker, and Ed is like, well, there's something going on behind it. He doesn't believe anything that she says. He says, are you in a relationship with her? Liz says, no, are you kidding? He does not believe her. He's like, no, you're being shady. You're lying. I know it. Huh. That's interesting, because he does that. And that is one of the unfortunate things about our traumas and our defenses, is that the very thing that we experienced that was very traumatic to us, not only will we often exhibit that behavior that we hated in other people, but we will accuse other people of being how we are being and how our people in our past were, right? So to walk us through this, it's possible that Ed had someone that was shady and lying to him, just flat out right to his face, and that hurt him and made him feel rejected or insecure in the relationship or something, unsure about things, gaslit himself. And then he internalizes that, and he becomes that way. When he's even mildly backed into a mild corner, he's just starts lying, smoke screen. And whenever he has a worry, a concern about Liz or Rose, he just automatically assumes that the other person is automatically lying. So he's the liar. He's the shady person. He thinks everyone else is lying. So that would, if he does have that, wow, that really makes a lot of sense, right? Does that make sense to you? Am I making sense? Now, I'm sure 100% of people watching are thinking Liz is a stupid head. I've never said that before. Is dumb for staying in a relationship with Ed, because this is not the first time she's experienced this in all likelihood. And if she stays with him after this, then she's a stupid head. And what I'll say is that from Liz's perspective, it would be potentially reasonable, within the range of reasonable thoughts and behavior, that she's like, yeah, I don't like that about him, but there are a lot of good things about him, and I know I can trust him in a lot of ways. It's not great that he does this thing, and we are in therapy and we are working on it. So it wouldn't be completely unreasonable for Liz to think, well, this is not great, but it's not enough reason right now for me not to trust that this relationship might improve in the future. Now, if we knew the full story, it's possible that we would conclude pretty strongly that it would be unreasonable to think that, but it's hard to know. I've treated couples, individuals, with much worse behavior than what we're seeing out of Ed right now, who did get better over time and who did have a positive side to their personality, and who were able, because right now we're seeing them kind of at their worst. They're most triggered, they're most pressured, they're exposing them to things, there's a lot of stress. So the chance that this sort of thing is happening all the time is not very high. But I don't know. I just want people, one, not to judge anyone on this show, particularly Liz. But two, I want people to put themselves in Liz's shoes, that we all have that decision that we have to make, right? Where there's and this is a larger topic that I won't go into, but we all run into negative qualities in our partners. There's no perfect partner. There's no perfect relationship. And where is that line, right? How do we gauge that? And sometimes based on how much we're into someone, how much compatibility and love there is, we might put up with a lot more than we would otherwise. And that's not bad. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. So I just want no one to judge Liz for that. All right, well, that does it for that episode. If you are a patron of the podcast, you get access to hundreds of episodes in which I do deep dives on all the topics that I touch upon in these videos. So if you want to learn more about the topics that I get into, you can become a patron, listen to the premium episodes, or just listen to the audio podcast, because I'll often go into it at some point. And take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.